Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. We're excited about this presentation, and we're going to get started in just a few minutes. So we're waiting for a few more people to hop on, so just be patient, and we will be with you very shortly.
I don't know what happened to Chad and check to Melissa.
Can you do it? Let's see.
Yeah, I'm back.
You good?
Okay. Can you get access?
And I can show my screen and I see how that happens. So I'm going to click not yet and I will be okay when it time comes. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm sorry about that. I'm glad that we did it though, because it would have happened right in the middle of everything.
That's okay. That's okay. So we're live now. So I'm going to switch back over to Kristen. I'm going to turn it over to Chuck. Before I do that, everyone, if you have questions, I know most of you have been through this before. If you have questions, right hand in the box on the right hand side, enter your questions as we go. And at the end of each presentation, there will be two. At the end, we will answer any questions you have. I'm going to turn it over to Chuck.
You ready to go?
Right.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking time from your busy schedules to join us today. We've been, we're always looking at providing content that's meaningful to our members, and we thought with some nudging with a specific board member, we thought this would be a great idea to have some content, some training, some ideas on how to build and maintain a recession resilient business. Notice we didn't say recession proof business because there's no such thing, but we can take some steps to prepare for what could be coming down the pike. Just this morning, you can't look at the news or watch TV without hearing the R word, the dreaded R word. Just this morning on the front page of the Wall Street Journal, the word recession is listed 3 times. There's also a very fine article about the Mariah Carey holiday song, but I'll leave that to you. I'll give that to Melissa later on to read. Again, thanks everyone for joining us. Our 2 guests today are really outstanding people in the construction industry. Kristen Bailey, as some of you already met, is not only a principal at Katz Bosch, but she's also an MCA associate member. Maybe more importantly, she's an important member of the MCA Education Committee, and we really value her professionalism, her friendship, in everything she always does for our membership. She's a CPA with really too many credentials to lay out this morning, besides being a CPA. So we'll just leave it at CPA and a bunch of other letters in her that go after her name. We're also very fortunate to have Chad Krinke here today, who's the owner and principal of Well Built Construction Consulting. Again, we are not predicting a recession, but all indications are something gloomy could be out there on the horizon, and we just want to be able to make sure that our contractors, our members, have some maybe some tidbits of advice on how to prepare for, and if the recession does come, maybe how to take advantage of that. So I'll turn it over to Kristen this morning, and appreciate everybody.
Great. Hi, contractors. Thanks for joining us today. So this topic is huge, and Chad and I could talk all day on it, but since we only have a couple of minutes, we're just going to go over some highlights, and hopefully this will translate into some really easy goals for your company in 2023. So, during a recession, relationships are key, and one of the C's in bonding is character. So if you haven't reached out to your bonding company recently, we 100% recommend that you do so and be honest with them. If 2023 is going to look very different than 2022 because gross profit, profit margins are fading, backlog is slipping, you definitely want to let them know in advance. Everybody hates surprises. One of the things we saw a lot in the 2008 time period was bonding companies requesting more timely information, financial information. So if you were providing, annual statements and maybe, an updated statement if you needed a larger bond, switching then to quarterly or monthly statements. We also did a ton of CPA prepared mid-year statements in that time frame. As far as on the banking side, your line of credit is not adjusted annually for inflation. So if you haven't looked at your line of credit capacity and needs in the past couple of years, we recommend that you do so. And ask for a line of credit when you don't, and ask for that increase when you don't need it. It's easiest to get credit when you don't need it. So if you still have really strong financial statements, go ahead and ask for that increase. You also, as things might start to slip, you also want to be aware of any covenants. Revisit those covenant calculations quarterly, and if you are in danger of not meeting them for the year end, definitely reach out to your banker in advance. The waiver process, you can request a waiver. That waiver process can take some time, and it will definitely hold up your year-end statements, which then makes the bonding company a little anxious. So again, just no surprises in those relationships. Be honest, and definitely look at your line of credit. Cash flow is, it's very important all the time, but definitely as we were thinking about, we're looking at entering a recessionary period, you want to make sure there's no bottlenecks in getting that cash in the door. Now, the billing process is one of the most, when we go in to look at contractors' processes, the billing process has a lot of duplications. There's often an outside Excel spreadsheet, there's an AIA, there's the subcontractors, your accounting software, and then a lot of times you're entering things in a GC or an owner's portal as well. And then there's back and forth on the bill, and then it finally gets approved like the month after you bill it. So if there's anything that can be done to streamline those processes, unfortunately, it's very contractor specific, so we don't have any sort of general recommendations besides to look at that process and see if there's any streamlining that can be done, in advance of the bill. Also, accepting electronic payments. I would say most of our contractors get about 50% of their cash receipts in electronically, but what can you do to bring that other, what can you do to get those other 50% in electronically? Also, if you are not sending out bills electronically, is that something you guys can look into for the new year? Especially, January, it's super easy. Have accounting reach out to your customers and say, we're just updating our contacts, want to make sure we have the right billing information, can we send this electronically, and if so, how can we do it? Once you've billed, having a really solid AR collection policy that's very detailed and lists, every step of the way. If your bills are due in 30 days, what happens on day 31? What happens on day 45? What happens on day 60? The last thing you want is to have, your project management team thinking, accounting is going to follow up on it, and accounting thinking vice versa, and nobody follows up on the invoice, and it's been 90 days. Underbillings are another part of accounts receivable, right? So an underbilling is costs that you've incurred and profit that you've earned that you haven't even billed yet. So that's definitely going to hinder your cash flow. So you definitely want to stay on top of that. We see, three main reasons for underbillings. One, there is honestly a lag between when the work was done and when you billed it. You just got more work done in that last week of the month and you billed it the next month. The second reason is unapproved change orders. And this is probably the largest reason we see. And the third reason is because your profit is overstated, right? And none of those, except for the first one where you're 100% billing it the next month, unapproved change orders and overstated profit, right? Those definitely eat into your cash flow. So you definitely want to, have weekly, bi-weekly, whatever the right time is for your company, means to go over your underbillings and to go over your delinquent accounts receivable and how can you get that cash in the door faster. It's just as important as cash coming in is cash going out. A lot of companies have adopted a centralized accounts payable processing where all of the invoices get emailed to one email, entered into the system. A lot of times you can, that can be like a keyless entry electronically done, and then goes out to the project managers for approval instead of having your project managers collect the invoices on the job sites and then give it to accounting maybe a couple days or a week later, right? Having a good handle on your accounts payable and your invoices is just as important as having a handle on your accounts receivable. Oh, also, one more thing before I move on to data analytics. In your collection policy, you want to have a plan for what happens, when your unbilled change orders are really high and your accounts receivable are over, 90 days, 120 days. Talk to your attorney now about your options. Can you not show up? I know it's easier said than done to not show up to a job site, but before things get really heated, you want to figure out how much of that job your company is willing to finance through unapproved change orders and old AR, before you're in that situation. So it's, as we're entering this time, and we might be entering a recessionary time period, you definitely want to, make some hard cutoffs. That way, when you're in the heat of the moment, you're not like, just one more week. They're going to pay us next week. You have a plan, you stick to it. All right, data analytics. One of the things Chad's going to talk about is, there's going to be a lot of opportunities and a lot of decisions to be made to move forward, but you want to make sure you have a good idea of where your company has been. That way you can use that historic data to make these decisions going forward. So we recommend just spending a couple of minutes, getting to know your company, looking at your WIP schedule. A lot of times, gross profit is looked at by job, but maybe consider putting your project managers on your job schedule and your estimators and looking at gross profit by project manager, looking at gross profit by estimator, looking at it geographically, looking at it by industry. Maybe, if you do like a lot of medical, maybe your hospitals and outpatient buildings, break it down and look at it and see if there's any trends, where you're making a ton of money, on hospitals, but maybe not a ton of money in this other area. So that way you can go forward, with some knowledge about, what's the best fit for your company. We also recommend looking at days sales outstanding by GC and by owner. You might notice some trends, if you're working with a whole bunch of different GCs, and you normally look at it by GC, you might notice some trends once you start to look at it by owners, be like, oh, this owner is really difficult to work with. They never approve our change orders. They don't pay timely. So just, getting to know that historic information. Overhead is another, huge topic. Doing a break-even analysis to know, what you should be bidding at. What's the minimum percent that you can bid at and break even? Contractors like to look at this a couple of different ways. One of them is, what's my volume? If my volume is X, what does my gross profit percent need to be in order to break even? Or I have a fixed cost. I have $2 million of fixed cost. So it sort of doesn't matter what my revenue and my gross profit are, as long as I'm covering my fixed costs by September, I'll be making money. And again, this is a very contractor specific calculation, and it is a little tricky, something we talk about all day on this, but I guess just make sure you are updating your overhead percent in bids, especially, because we're in this inflationary period. When we talk to contractors about their bidding percent, they're very specific about their direct and indirect costs, and then it's like, we just throw 15% on for profit and overhead. But what if your overhead's 20%? So just know your overhead percent, know what you need to be bidding at to be at a break even. Look at your vendor makeup, see if there's any vulnerabilities there. If your biggest supplier goes out of business, will you be able to, make new relationships quickly? And then cash flow forecasts. So this starts with your revenue forecast and your billing forecast. And doing a cash flow forecast shows how important it is to get those bills done timely and to get those change orders approved and to get those billed and collected. So I think, having a plan, updating your policies, and having a plan, before things start to go south is definitely, will definitely help you build a recession-proof business. So I'm going to turn it over to Chad.
All right, cool. Thank you so much. That was awesome. For me, the big takeaway in all of that, like if I'm summarizing there, it's a lot of really smart strategies to put yourself in a solid cash position. That's one of my biggest takeaways. And then have tons of visibility on the key metrics that impact your business, the things that are going to make your business successful or not. So exciting stuff. I will build on that with some strategies here. So give me one moment. I will get my slideshow going. Hopefully I got the wrong screen here. Or that, I mean, sorry, right screen here. I don't have the wrong screen here. All right, excellent. So as was described, I'm Chad Prinky. I run a consulting firm that focuses just on contractors. And what I've been doing for years with all of our contractor clients since 2008, everybody that I've worked with has been focused on building a business that is extremely well run and by its very nature resilient to adverse market conditions. So I'm going to share some of that stuff with you today and hopefully give you some ideas for things you can be doing, because back to the point that was made at the very start of this, we're not gonna guess whether a recession is coming in 2023 or 24, but we know a recession is coming, period, right? Like, you just don't know when a recession is coming. So we should always be building a business that is resilient and designed to withstand external pressures, internal and external pressures. So with that, I like to use this idea that the business that comes into the projects that you perform are the fuel, kind of like the food that fuels your business, right? So if you can go with me on that analogy, right? When you're in survival mode, your willingness to eat anything is pretty high, right? Somebody says, if you got to survive, you're going to eat your least favorite food. Screw it. That would be a wise choice. You're going to eat your least favorite food. If they said you got to eat a grub, which is, I believe, what Bear Grylls is doing here, looking underneath a rock, to survive, that's a good idea, to do whatever it takes to survive. Now, the reality is that we've been living since 2000 and roughly 11, 12 in a relatively positive economic cycle. I mean, it was a very slow recovery. We've talked about that, but a recovery nonetheless, with the exception of a very strange blip in 2020, which we can talk about a little bit. But what we've really been experiencing over the past 10 years or so is one in which we're not in survival mode, but where food is plentiful. And one of the things that I want to start off with, just in this theme on the food analogy, is that believe it or not, more contractors go out of business, not because of a lack of food, but in fact, they go out of business from gluttony and food poisoning, either because they have taken on way too much work and they can't do it, or they've taken on the wrong kind of work. They got too excited about a particular kind of job. They talked themselves into doing something that they really weren't capable or qualified to do. And it's those things that'll actually really run a business into the ground. So recessions are particularly dangerous for companies that have an unhealthy system. So like, if all you've been eating are candy bars for the past 10 years, right, then your business isn't going to be very recession resilient. So it's really one of the things I want you to think about is, what is the healthiest business for us as we go through this process, we go through this conversation. If you haven't been, 22 has been something of a challenge, but from 19, 20, and 21, by and large, the opportunities have been there to make a lot of GP if you have been a trade contractor. If you haven't been, chances are pretty good that you have an unhealthy diet. So I want you to think about that and check that in general is, what should our diet as a business look like? Okay, so this is what I'm striving for, is achieving a mindset like the Oracle of Omaha, Warren Buffett, where he is fearful when others are greedy and greedy when others are fearful. The only way to cultivate that mindset is to take a lot of the advice that Kristen offered and make sure that you are putting yourself in an extremely strong cash position and that you really own your financial position. You know just where you are. But it's also, I think, in applying some of the concepts that I'm going to cover, which, and I don't say this to sound, I don't know, cold or something like that, but I'll be really candid with you. My clients are excited about a recession. They are sitting on the edge of their seat. Why? Because they've put themselves in a position that they can be really aggressive when the market gets soft. So when their competition start cutting staff because they have to trim overhead, they're going to gobble them up. And with it, they're going to gobble up market share. When opportunities to buy distressed companies present themselves, they'll be right there to take over distressed companies. Recessions are awesome opportunities if you are in a great position to take advantage of them. Here are some of the strategies. I'm going to give you 3 strategies that you can do to today and as a discipline in an ongoing way to put yourself in a position to take advantage of a recession. 2 quick caveats. Number 1, not all these strategies are going to be for you. Maybe you're only interested in 1 or 2 of the 3 strategies that I put out there. It's totally cool. Not everything is going to make sense for you to take advantage of. Second caveat is that you're mechanical contractors. I got to say, I'm going to spend everything I'm about to talk about is focused on construction, but as a mechanical contractor, you have the ability to have a service business. And if you don't have a service business, that is a potential missed opportunity. Now, you may have made that decision with your eyes wide open and decided that that just isn't for you, and that's okay. But the service business offers recurring revenue. People are always going to fix their pipes. They're not going to let their buildings flood out from failed systems. What they might not do is do full system upgrades and repositioning that brings all of their fixtures and all of their behind the scenes materials, whether it's plumbing or HVAC, into the 21st century. They may not spend that money, but they're not going to allow tenants to have water dripping on their head. They're not going to allow winter time to push the building into 35 degrees inside in a prolonged way. And for that reason, service business is a very attractive business, and it does have a higher barrier to entry. Service is a higher barrier to entry world in which there's higher level of competition that you're going to run into. Construction, it's easy to get invited to bid something and have a chance. Service, it's cold calling, it's networking, it's getting yourself into a position to find those opportunities. So I'm not going to spend any more time talking about service other than to say, consider it. And if you're already in service, double down, and you'll both be helping your existing business and your future valuation of your business if you build that recurring revenue at a high GP. Strategy number 1 for construction, right, is to have a robust relationship client list. Here's what I mean by that. There are a lot of companies that are pursuing projects. So they've got projects on their list and they're running down this project, that project, the other project. And what they're not necessarily doing is running down the relationships that are associated with those projects independent of those projects. In other words, rather than just putting your sights on 101 Main Street, man, that's a really big job for us, we'd really like to go get that. Put your sights on Clark Construction, develop and cultivate your relationship with Clark Construction, the project team that is likely to be involved in projects like 101 Main Street, and cultivate that relationship through meetings and events and client appreciation and just staying in touch and demonstrating that you care. Build those relationships with people. And what you'll find is that you don't have to chase projects. You actually get the opportunity to be in the catbird seat on the opportunities that really fit your target. So contractors who chase projects tend to have superficial relationships that come and go as projects do. They're always participating in the hard bid environment. They're always only winning if they're low. They're only getting invited to the table for discussion and feedback if they're low. But contractors who pursue relationships have an avenue to early involvement and high hit rates on their target projects. Now, what you're probably sitting there thinking is, yep, we're one that pursues relationship clients. I'm going to challenge you to think through that based on what I'm about to cover. Is what I find is almost every trade contractor has some relationship clients. What's really common is that they kind of have their guys. I always joke about this with my clients, like, you got your guys, and these are guys we just like. We always do business with them. It's this team at Whiting Turner, man, that Greenbelt office, those are our guys. Or fill in the blank with whatever your guys look like. And that's great. I want you to have your guys. But if we start breaking down your revenue and we identify that more than 80% of your revenue is coming from this very small group of your guys, I know it feels good. I know it's kind of profitable right now. It's easy. You like doing business with people that you trust, and it feels like you're actually minimizing risk in your business. And in one way, you are minimizing risk, but in another way, you're creating a lot of risk. And so let's talk about that. Here's a mock company, $50 million revenue company that I find is pretty representative of most subcontractors that I walk into. $50 million company that has the vast majority of their business, 80% of their business, wrapped up in 3 key relationship clients. The majority of their work is with these 3 relationship clients. It's, Hensel Phelps in DC, and it's, Clark Construction's team, particularly anything that's headed up by this project executive. And then it's, you know what I mean? I'm filling in the blank with these. But what are yours? And what they do is they really have these relationship clients that make up the majority of their business, but it's too few. And the rest of their business is made up of opportunistic clients. And opportunistic clients are dangerous because at the end of the day, an opportunistic client is only ever going to just do business with you, put you back out to hard bid, and you're going to be starting from scratch again. So in these situations, they have what's called high wallet share, which sounds good. I do most of their business. And it is good for, again, in some ways, it's nice. I like that you're in there and that you're solidly, in position in that account. But it has low growth potential, which means, we'll get to exactly what that means. Here's a separate contractor example. Here's a contractor that has 20 clients, all making up 50% of their revenue. Or I'm sorry, all making up $50 million of their revenue, and it's evenly dispersed. Now this is, I know, very theoretical, but every single one of these clients is a relationship client. So what that means is they've got low wallet share. Per these clients, they're actually only doing a small amount of their work. They could be doing much more of their work. That requires discipline. And what it requires is for us to identify the 25% or the 20% or the 10% or the 30% of that client's business that is a perfect fit for us, and to get really good at telling our great clients, our relationship clients, not everything is a perfect fit for us, and we're only going to pursue the work that is a really nice fit for us. You don't want us doing work that doesn't make us look like a rock star. So what they, as a subcontractor, what the GC wants from you is your number. They want for you to participate in bidding. So I'm okay with you participating in bidding on 50% or 75% of their work. I just want you to get really good at communicating. That's the 20 we want. That's the 25 that's ours. The rest of we don't want. Don't give them to us. You have to promise not to give them to us so I can give you a real number, right? So because if you give it to me, I don't want it. Man, that takes a lot of discipline. It's a huge mindset shift. I promise that if you get good at doing this, it has massive positive payoff. Because here's the reality. If you only do the work that's perfectly suited for your business, you're going to look like a freaking rock star. Number one. Number two, you're going to make crazy gross profit because you're going to be so incredibly efficient and effective on that group of projects that really fits your sweet spot. And so number three, you'll be creating this pent up demand. Gosh, we wish we could work with XYZ Mechanical more. If XYZ Mechanical just could take on more of our work, we'd all be so much happier. And exactly where this leaves us in a recession is where I want to be. So when a recession hits and that GC's business gets cut in half, in scenario A, right, contractor A that has 3 relationship clients and that's it, and they were already maxed out, they shrink by half too, because there's nowhere to go. They couldn't grow inside those relationship accounts. And then all these opportunistic clients, man, these are jobs you don't want to win, because the only way they want them is because they were so much lower than everybody else. Because trust me, all those people had relationship clients. They awarded you the work over their relationship client because you were that much cheaper. You were stupid low. So in scenario A, not only do you get cut in half, but your GP is destroyed. And in that environment, that's where we start making lots and lots of cuts. And as I talked about at the beginning, you can survive, but you're eating grubs and right, you're barely living. Contractor B, they stay 50 million. Why? Because all they do is tell their client, great news, we have additional bandwidth. We've been doing 20% for you. We've been knocking the cover off the ball. You think we're the greatest thing since sliced bread. We can now handle 40. We can grow our market share with you, our wallet share with you. And so in scenario B, what gives us the ability to not have to compete in this insane rush to the bottom, low bid, bidding to strangers scenario that contractor A gets stuck in. So it's all about where you make your hay, and how you're positioned. I personally subscribe to the idea that if you're disciplined while the sun is shining, you can actually make hay while everybody else is hiding, right? So is this strategy for you? Number one, it takes time and resources to develop relationship clients. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of money. You're spending time at games, and you're sponsoring events, and you're doing a lot. Number two, you require a customer service mindset, not going to war with clients. You've got to be in a mindset, if you're going to really build your business on relationship clients, that you're going to take care of your customers. That's not for everyone. Number three, saying no to projects from a relationship client is hard. I already referenced that. But you got to be certain of your operational and customer service strength to confidently allow your competition a piece of the pie. In other words, I'm going to willingly say, don't give me that job. Give that job to somebody else. I don't want that job. Even though you could totally do it and you could talk yourself into handling it, you're literally going to keep yourself focused just on your piece of the pie. You better be certain that you're going to wow them, that you're going to be that much better, and that discipline is going to pay off in them viewing you through the light that they need to view you to award you that increase when times do tighten. Strategy number two, market sector diversification. This is a little faster. So the sector has up and downs, right? Every sector has up and downs. So in 2008, publicly funded projects were up. Some tech sectors were up or flat. Healthcare was relatively flat in 2008, 9, 10. I mean, in the Great Recession. Down was anything developer driven, all single family, and really most everything else. If it required money, right? If it required getting a loan, it was down. 2020, here was that blip, and it really was a meaningful recession for some people. It was just not an economy-wide recession. Up or flat, multifamily, single family, data centers, flex and industrial distribution, all those were relatively up or at the worst flat, depending on where you were in the country. Down significantly, retail, hospitality, they got crushed. So as we look at 2023 and we look further out, one of the things that we know is that infrastructure will be up. There's a ton of cash being poured into that at the federal, state, and local levels. There's going to be a lot of money to be had in infrastructure type projects. Now, I know you're mechanical contractors, you're thinking we don't do roads and bridges. Not every project that has to do with infrastructure is going to be roads and bridges. It includes all kinds of support facilities that have to exist to run that kind of infrastructure. So there are going to be vertical structures that require mechanical systems as a part of the infrastructure program. What's going to be down? Who the hell knows? I can guess. I've got ideas, right? I've got ideas about what should be down, and I bet you do too. And we can have all kinds of interesting conversations over coffee or a beer. But what we do know with some level of certainty is that infrastructure is going to be up and affordable housing is going to be up. Again, lots and lots of money have been pouring into affordable housing. Current administration is committed to continuing to pour money into affordable housing. So that's a space where anything that's going to be getting LIHTC funding, anything that's going to be getting funding, through an affordable housing context is likely to continue forward without much interruption. It's not to say that everything else won't continue forward without much interruption. It's just we know that affordable housing and infrastructure have a certain level of protection. These are this is what I've learned. And you could probably add to this list of ones that you believe are going to be up or flat. So as you think about market sector diversification, the two questions that I want you to ask yourself are, what types of construction can we comfortably pivot to operationally? X is a lot like Y, right? So if you are a multifamily mechanical contractor, you're doing tons of market rate jobs with the Clark Builders Groups and the Harkins and the that type of stuff. That's what you're building all the time. The bridge to affordable housing is actually pretty simple. It's just different relationships. So that's not a hard thing to do if you're pivoting from market rate wood frame construction to affordable housing wood frame construction. There's some nuances in procurement, but it's not a hard pivot. So consider what types of construction are easy enough for you to pivot to operationally. If we could do X, we could totally do Y, right? The second is, which of your clients are actively involved in sectors you just don't have relationship with the people in their group, right? I used Whiting Turner earlier as an example. Whiting Turner has a group, just in DC, Baltimore, has a group dedicated to virtually every market sector. Are you connected with all the groups? Anytime somebody tells me Whiting Turner is one of our biggest accounts, they're a great account for me too, but it doesn't mean that I'm in with Whiting Turner. Right? Whiting Turner is massive, and it's a huge entrepreneurial organization, and they're not alone. There are a bunch of them that are run similarly, where group by group has their own total decision-making process. And as you think about different market sectors, it might be a really simple introduction from Bill to Michelle that helps you to go from building, tenant fit out office space with them and jumping over into, GSA schedule work. I don't know, right? It may not take much for you to cross that bridge. So what types of construction can you pivot to, and what relationships are easy enough to pivot to? Those are those two key questions. Is this strategy for you? New BD is going to be required. It's a lot like the other one. Do you have the resources to do it? You need to be in it for the long game. Scrambling around and trying to chase market sectors is a great way to put yourself in trouble. You can't start running after it once the trend occurs. You've got to take a long look, and you've got to get in it for the long game. You want to be in this market before the recession, right? And you want to bet correctly so that it pays off during the recession. And then you want to continue to be a powerhouse in that market sector post-recession. The people that wait until the recession to try to get into that market end up wasting a ton of resources trying to get into something that doesn't work for them. Is it too much of an operational stretch to get into other sectors? Can you meet the requirements? Construction scope, skills, cash flow. Some of these sectors have different receivable schedules. If you've ever done business with the federal government, you know what I'm talking about. Compliance reporting, MBE, CBE, all these different types of things. It may look good on the surface, but as you start digging in, what's it actually going to require? Do you have that capability inside? Can you start to develop those third-party partners? I got one more strategy to cover, and I'm going to go quickly because I know we want to try to allow room for Q&A. So the third is become operationally excellent. So sloppy operations. When times are good, operations can become sloppy. Economic conditions tighten and margins tighten. Your inefficiencies or your efficiencies are going to be the difference between you eking out a profit or getting in trouble, right? Far too many contractors have no idea how their projects are actually performing until they're over. And that to me is goes to what Kristen was talking about before. You have to get your hands wrapped around your financials, and you've got to run an operations department that is driven by the dollars and cents, and that is going to create the types of efficiencies you need. So here's some things you got to have. Number one, you got to have up-to-date visibility into a project's financial and schedule status compared to the budget and the project schedule. In other words, you must have a cost-loaded schedule and a way of monitoring that in real time. You must have accurate projections for both based on real data. Systems. So here's what I find. Most people actually have the software already. They're like, oh God, how do I start? Most people have it. They're just either not fully understood, right? Employees aren't dedicated to the data input. The data is correct, but nobody's using it to make decisions. So it exists. Like I was just with a company yesterday that we went over their WIP, and with all the project managers, I said, I could tell I was getting blank stares. Brand new client. I just started working with these guys, and I was getting blank stares from the project managers. And I said, "Have you guys seen this?" And the heads start shaking, and I was like, "All right, meeting over. Totally different meeting now. Right? We gotta have a totally different meeting where we train the WIP instead of reviewing it. Data is all lagging, and steps can't be taken to prevent mishaps. That's one of the biggest problems. People don't close out the previous month until the freaking end of the next month. We got to get better and faster than that. And another operational problem that I see is field productivity is slowed owing to poor field leadership, undertrained staff, and a lack of accurate daily productivity measures. So here's some things here's some other things that I think you should be looking at in terms of process gains. We're over-reliant on estimators instead of estimating processes. How many of you have an estimator that is really running the department that if they went away, it would be a big problem because nobody else knows how to replicate exactly what they do? In fact, it'd just be you who was back there doing estimates and trying to figure it out. That's a problem, must be fixed. Got to get estimating to be a process, a routine, a system inside our business, and become less dependent on that person and instead depend on processes that consistently develop good results. Because when that person has problems at home or right, or fill in the blank with whatever's going on in their world, you need to not be dependent on all of your estimates going through a channel that may either disappear or become flawed. By implementing procurement processes, many companies I work with uncover 2 to 3% in GP immediately. Not hard. Just how do we buy? How do we buy all of our materials? How do we buy our subcontractors? How do we negotiate? There's 2-3 points sitting there in almost every case. So there's an operational gain to be had. Revamped accounting processes can dramatically reduce the time needed to close out monthly, improve accuracy, and provide additional insights and to help better manage your business. My target's the 10th. Every client that I work with, I push them toward the 10th. Usually when I come in, they're somewhere close to the 20th or even worse. And we start to inch that further and further back, and we start holding our financial meetings on like the 10th or the closest weekday thereafter. By implementing sales processes for your team to follow, many teams increase their hit rate in GP immediately. Just simple stuff like, are you following up with your estimates? You know, how many times I come into a company and the first thing that when I start asking, where do we stand? What projects are we going to win? And so on. And they say, well, I mean, here's everything we bid. And I'll say, what's the status of all these jobs? And they don't know. There's just that's just money just hanging out right there. It's sitting there. There's opportunities to get on the phone and to take those projects off the street before you get invited to some best and final offer process that is specifically designed to squeeze about 3 to 5 points out of everybody's numbers by the general contractor at the end of the game. You don't have to go through that if you win early, and there are ways to do it with good sales process. So is this strategy for you? Yes. There's no, yes, this strategy is for you. Becoming operationally excellent is not something you should consider. It's something you should do, period. And really figuring out where your lack of efficiencies are. So in summary, keeping it real simple, build relationships and build tons of them. Focus less on your key relationships that you just love and you want to cuddle, right? And focus more on developing that feeling with 10, 15, 30 relationships. And that's an investment. And then have the discipline to only pursue a small portion of their work while building these incredible relationships. The two don't have to be hand in hand, right? You don't have to do all their work to have an incredible relationship with. Number 2, market sector diversification. When recessions hit, they tend not to hit evenly. They hit different spots at different times. Do you have all your eggs in the retail basket? If that's the case, I would be concerned. Do you do exclusively wood frame construction? If that's the case, I would be concerned. Start to think about diversifying. And then, side note, service comes in. It's not a sector, but definitely get into service if you can. And then finally, operational excellence. There's money sitting there right now. And when times are really good, you're not even looking for more money. You're like, man, we just made an 11% net, high five, double-digit nets. We crushed it. Could have been 18, right? And when the market tightens and that 11% shrinks down to 1 or -3, you want to be able to wrap your hands around that 8 that you were leaving on the table, right? Or that 7 you were leaving on the table. So that's all I have for you. I hope that that's useful. I will turn it back over for Q&A at this point. And, thanks for having me.
Kristen, Chet, really excellent information, great presentations. Thank you very much. It was a real honor. First, before we maybe jump into just a couple questions, what's the best way for our members to contact each of you?
Kristen, go for it.
So email is the best way. Melissa, can you send out our emails?
Yep, I sure can.
Cool. That's same. You could definitely share my email. I am very active on LinkedIn as well. And sometimes, there's two things. You might be thinking, I just want to, learn more about generally the concepts that this guy's talking about. If that's the case, I have a podcast, little plug. It's called The Morning Huddle. Check it out. It's a LinkedIn live thing that's on every week. Plus it's on YouTube and yada, yada, yada. But if you really want to talk, which I would welcome, email is probably the best way to reach out.
Got it.
Excellent, thank you. Kristen, what is, and again, if anybody has a question, feel free to enter it in the queue. What would that, sometimes talking to your banker could be an uncomfortable conversation. What would that initial conversation look like if you're trying to pivot to prepare for this? What would that initial meeting look like or conversation look like with your bank?
So I would definitely have, updated financial statements, and then also have like a forecast or a projection. That way you can say, things, this is where we are right now, but this is my goal. This is what I'm working towards. That way it's not all like doom and gloom, profit margins are slipping a little bit. I'm not able, we're hearing already that bids are tightening up, that there's a lot more bidders, and that's, our contractors are having to lower their bid percentage a little bit to win. So, this is where we are, but this is what we're doing. Definitely have a game plan as to, what you're going to do to, move forward. And it can be just like Chad said, like tightening up your operations. This is our, right, we're really focusing on getting our field labor to enter their time every single day. That way we can have accurate, budgets to actual, and we can make better decisions about our jobs. It doesn't have to be, we've secured 20 new relationships. It can be these small steps. And also just the knowledge that you are not alone, right? You're not the only contractor having this conversation with your banker, and that they welcome this feedback from you. So.
Excellent tip. Chad, you make me a little uncomfortable when you're presenting, because I think about how more efficient MCA could be, little MCA could be with some of the stuff you're talking about. So you make me a little uncomfortable, but you're talking about a whole philosophical mindset switch. Some of our contractors are just trying to get through the day, which is an excuse. You're talking about moving from, monogamy to polygamy with clients, right? And, being operationally efficient. What would that process look like? I mean, I'm trying to run my business. I'm trying to get through the day. I'm trying to make payroll. How can I do this and also incorporate some of the philosophical switches you're talking about?
So it all starts with the one commodity that we all have that is extremely finite, right? We all have it, and that's time. And what I always say to owners, executives, is you must protect time to work on your business as opposed to in it. You working in your business is going to happen every day, whether you want it to or not. The phone calls are going to fly, the meetings have got to occur, the problems that you got to solve, they're going to arise. But the thing that will never show up unless you force it to is dedicated time to working on your company, making your company better. And so everybody's in a slightly different position, but I would challenge everyone to think about one basic rule of thumb, which is I believe that a starting point, if you really aren't doing that today, a starting point is to set aside 10% of your week every single week to do things that make a difference for the future of your company, not just the today of your company. That includes process development, business development activities, proactive recruiting and hiring, proactive training and development, not just like the on-the-job training, but the like pulling everybody together and working with them on a specific concept. All these are things that you can do to work on your business. My fully self-actualized CEOs and executives that I work with are spending on average 50 to 70% of their time there. It's amazing. It's an incredible place to live. But you get there by building up the people around you, by building the systems so that you're operating and living in a world that truly does give you the space to be more strategic. And you can understand why those are the people that can't freaking wait for a recession, because I mean, they're ready to pounce. They're going to take advantage of opportunity.
Excellent, great points. Any questions from our participants? I should say any additional questions. It looks like you've both knocked it out of the park. I would encourage our members to reach out to both Kristen and Chad. I mean, obviously they're a wealth of information. You know, Little MCA relies on Kristen a lot for a lot of things, but behind the scenes, and she always is a great go-to resource. And Chad is obviously new to our little world, but an amazing resource. I would certainly you know, encourage you to reach out to you if becoming operationally better. I think I remember back when I had clients in 2007, 2008, 99. Everything you said, Chad, is spot on, and you know, makes you able to get through what probably could be a bad recession. I hope not. Hope all the predictions are wrong, and it ends up being a soft landing and everything's peachy keen. But I think to your point also, Chad, it's not, you know, it's not if, it's when, and you need to be prepared and make a plan right now. So anything to add to that, guys, before we sign off?
I always say, you know, be more like the ant and less like the grasshopper. Right? Prepare for winter. If anybody knows that fable, be more like the ant and less like the grasshopper. And it really just applies. You should always be operating in a way that is the most efficient and the healthiest for your business. And you know, if you have just finished like many people I know have, a 2022 binge, taking on way too much work, totally overworking your employees, everybody's slammed, everybody's tired, and you look at the GP and it's not there, it's a great indicator that you need to rethink and slow down and really become a more intentional business. Now, the only caveat that I'd say is I really hope a recession doesn't hit right away for you, because that will be a tough time for you to experience that. The time to have implemented all that stuff would have been years ago, right? So, but yeah, that's why I say always be the ant. Doesn't matter. It's never too late to actually start. It's just that right now, if you start, you might get, you know, whacked a little at the outset of the recession, where, you know, if you had done it 4 years ago, you'd be ready for a recession. You'd be comfortable with it. So anyway, that would be my final words. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Melissa, as always, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Happy holidays, everyone. We appreciate it.
Have a good day.
Yeah, thank you.